Okay, I think we're good.
All right, it is 2:15 and we're reconvening. Thank you all for staying with us and coming back. Discussion. Any other questions? I know there's one item that we had already asked staff to come back with something. I know they've been working on it. Anyone else? Comments?
There was
We've been doing it all along, but just in case.
Yeah, that was a big bump.
I don't know what that was.
I'm always interested in the question of the report frequency and that sort of thing. And just looking at my notes, the SWIP uploads, something was mentioned about quarterly. And these are living documents. But do you have any clarification on the frequency and what kind of flexibilities are within our draft permit?
Yeah,
And opportunities to maybe report less if warranted?
So the idea behind that quarterly or every 3 months collector is really if you do make changes, and let's say you make more than one significant change in a 3-month period of time, you only have to upload a new SWIP once in that 3-month period. It's a collector and it's optional. So if your facility is not making revisions to your SWIP, it doesn't even apply to you. It's kind of like a sweep that comes along and says, you only have to do this once per the 3-month period of time, and then you would start a new 3-month period of time, and if there's more revisions, then it would sweep along and pick it up. But it would only pick it up if the change happened.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's not meant to be every 3 months put a new SWIP.
Right. It's almost the reverse, is you don't do any uploads.
It was trying to
unless there's a
save
change.
clarity. Yeah, it was in response to a comment that said we could be uploading new SWIPs every week, and that's a burden and over requiring us to do that. So it was meant to address that.
Good. No, it's a very good clarification, and I'll remember it as the SWIP sweep.
Awesome.
I didn't write it down. What was it you said before? More of, darn it. Okay. Other?
What was it, more? I can't remember either.
More of, not more of it. Sorry.
Quote of the day.
I should always write these things down.
I will in the future have a staff dedicated to taking down my comments so that we
I
have
think
them for
that's all
future
right.
reference.
No, just quarterly. Just give me any new ones that you think are worth reporting. Right. Exactly. I asked my questions pretty much all along, but other questions. So why don't you give us a sense of the hydrology issue you were working on?
Sure. And before I forget, let me also mention we had a couple of other very minor changes that staff wanted to read to you.
Okay.
But let's do the big one first, the groundwater that's hydrologically connected. And up on the screen in a moment is a series of proposed changes, and essentially what this would accomplish is removing the discussion that was going to be in the permit itself under the notice of non-applicability section, removing the discussion about discharges to groundwater that are directly hydrologically connected to waters of the United States, taking that out entirely. So it just, as you see on the screen there, removing the highlighted clause so that the portion that's left in the permit itself just refers to no discharge of industrial stormwater to waters of the United States, period. I guess semicolon or. And then moving the discussion about groundwater so that it's entirely in the fact sheet. And you'll see on the screen there on page 70 what the additional words are that are proposed to be added to the fact sheet. Again, sort of explaining that, well, it's complicated, and in some cases there could be a hydrologic connection, and that would count essentially as a discharge to waters of the United States. So the key point is essentially the information all about groundwater is all in the fact sheet. The idea behind that is, although we didn't want to lose sight of the fact that in some rare circumstances a discharge to groundwater that's, or a discharge to land or to groundwater that's essentially adjacent to a surface water body could require an NPDES permit.
Right.
But we're putting all of that discussion in the fact sheet where it probably belongs because it is essentially a fairly rare circumstance.
I don't know if it's rare, but it's not commonplace.
Yes.
And so that addresses Ms. Wagner's issue about our calling it out, creating confusion, and this then just restates what the law is.
That's the idea. You might want to ask Ms. Wagner if it satisfies her or not. I hope it does.
I might want to. Yeah, we could. You're, Ms. Wagner, you're invited to comment.
I'm sorry.
You don't
rather
have
than asking
veto
if you-
authority over it, however, but we appreciate you raising it.
Thank you very much. Well, I do appreciate it being clarified and taken out of the order so that it doesn't, so that water, discharge to waters of the United States. I think when we were before the break, you're talking about possibly giving an example of, adjacent water, but I guess you decided not to get that specific. And I think you're going to get a lot of questions on this, but at least it will not appear to add any new jurisdiction. You're not broadening the reach of the permit, so I think that's definitely positive. So if you could say it's not very common or something. What was that? I wrote that down.
He said rare, and I didn't buy that.
Yeah.
It's not commonplace.
Well, because it's actually
It's
the
not
point.
ubiquitous.
It is the point source discharge issue, and the fact that it sort of results in a molecule wafting its way downstream is not really the point. But I think you
Right.
could clarify all that in guidance if there's are further questions. Because it says may result in a discharge to waters of the United States. Could constitute.
Could constitute
I-
better? Because it's,
What?
could constitute? Is that better just because that's the language we see all the time?
The determination of what can be, and in certain circumstances, a discharge to groundwater that has a direct hydrologic could constitute a discharge to a water of the United States. Yeah, I think that would be better.
Okay. I'm fine with that, if you guys are okay with that. Also, circumstances is spelled wrong.
Yeah,
Be
I
good to
got
fix
that
that.
too. It just spelled
Once a
like on-
typesetter, always a typesetter.
April Fools. And then there were a couple of other changes just to talk
Yeah,
about
no,
if you want
fill
to
us
move
in,
on.
sure.
Okay. We have some, I guess they're more errata, but there's about 3 changes that have to deal with an acronym. Surprised there's only one acronym we got wrong. It has to do with the multiple application and report tracking system. 2 times in the permit, and I believe once in the fact sheet and once in the permit registration document attachment, the and came before report. So we're switching the and report to be accurate. So they should read everywhere. It should say multiple application and report tracking system. What it said in 4 instances was multiple application report and tracking system.
Oh, all right.
So we wanted to change that. And then there's one more section. It's in the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan, Section X, and then under the Monitoring Implementation Plan, I, and then Section 3. It requires dischargers to justify situations for their alternative monitoring discharge locations. That was not paralleled in the monitoring section, Section XIC3 or 11. We wanted to make it parallel that in the monitoring section it said that they had to include that in the MIP because it said it in the other sections in the monitoring plan, so it wasn't parallel. So you want me to read the language?
Yeah, don't we have to have it? If we're going to include it now,
Okay.
it's got to be,
So section 11C3 would now say the discharger is required to identify when practicable alternative discharge locations for any discharge location identified in accordance with section X or 11B4 if the facility's discharge locations are, and then these would now be sub I and sub sub 2, affected by stormwater runoff from surrounding areas that cannot be controlled and or difficult to observe or sample. Example, submerged discharge outlets, dangerous discharge locations, accessibility period. It's the new section 11C3B. The discharger shall submit and certify via SMARTS any alternative discharge location or revision to the alternative discharge location in the monitoring implementation plan.
All right, and that's just paralleling something that's in the other section, so it's not a new thing that people haven't seen.
No, it's no new language. It's just making it clear and parallel. And then there's one more change. This has to, in attachment C, the glossary. The new requirement for the QISP to help new dischargers with the 303D impaired determination, we did not include that in the list of things to do in the definition for QISP. And so we added a sentence saying that this is also part of their responsibilities. And so it would add only, so under the definition for QISP in attachment C, it would say only required once a discharger reaches level 1 status. A QISP is the individual assigned to ensure compliance with this general permit or to assist new dischargers determining coverage eligibility for discharges to an impaired water body. And then just a revision to make it read correctly. A QISP's responsibility includes. Is that satisfy the reading of the revisions? I've never done that.
Well done.
All right, council, you say an affirmative yes versus you're both nodding?
It is sufficiently clear what is being revised, so yes, that's sufficient.
For our
And for the record,
on the web.
we are fine with it. Instead of saying may result in a discharge, could constitute a discharge on the NONA issue.
That is the way I've seen it in other things, so. All right. Comments then, if there aren't more questions. Any comments?
I would just comment, thanks for all of the hard work on this permit from all the stakeholders and staff, and it's very important. But I don't have any more questions.
I'll add my thanks as well, and not especially to the staff, but also to everyone who participated in this effort over the past, how many years again was it? Never mind, don't count. I would say, though, that based on some of the comments we heard today, while we hopefully will be celebrating an action by the board, obviously a lot of hard work is still ahead, and some of the comments for guidance and perhaps even some assistance in terms of interpretation and consistency in enforcement, consistency to the extent appropriate, of course, to implement the permit and carry out some of the activities in the permits, I think are very, very good points that have been made. And so while I do want to take a moment and appreciate the work that everyone's done, I also want to recognize that the hard work is still ahead, and keeping in mind, I think some of the comments we heard from some of the environmental organization in terms of, where is this going, how will we be using the data, and what is the future in terms of our activities and our path with respect to stormwater management. I think, that's where hopefully some of the discussions and upcoming work on the stormwater strategic work plan will help guide that activity and set up that vision and those next steps. So I think while this has been, without prejudging the outcome, I think, a long and very involved process, very difficult and stressful, and I can say this, having been on the board for a lot of those times, disappointing at times. I think it's been also a very good learning experience. It's also been an opportunity for staff, stakeholders, not board members because of ex parte prohibition, but to develop a working relationship. And hopefully it's that kind of productivity and working relationship that will have a lot of benefits and payoff in the long term in terms of the outcomes that we all want to accomplish with this program. So thank you all. With that, I'll go ahead and make a motion for approval of this item with the changes proposed by staff, first in the change sheet as well as these most recent ones.
Second.
Right. Any thing to add? Fran?
With the change sheet. I'm going to wait till after it's done. I am so superstitious. Second.
All right. Any more discussion? I have a few things to say. I can wait too.
No, I just want to support Board Member Dodek's statements about the follow-up and implementation and our strategic work plan and how this fits in with our overall stormwater vision.
Yeah, that becomes very important, and moving on to it gets very important. I mean, I'd just say, oh, I hate when people say, I'd just say, I'll just say it. No, I don't even need to say I want to say it. I should just say it. Oh, I wanted to say, yeah, no, we're starting a list of those that we hate. I, for one, that's my favorite. You know, I do think this is a big step forward. I know it's not enough for many, and it's too much for others, and I just want to underscore the fact that we are trying to deal with a very real environmental issue with very real impacts to public health and the environment that has been a long time coming. And so I appreciate all the hard work, and I appreciate all of the good faith and all the incredible work that people have put into comments and over the course of these last years in addition to the last few months, and I think it's important to move forward. A lot of this is about good housekeeping and being a good neighbor, but we know that it can be challenging. So I do appreciate the effort that staff has put in to try and figure out how to up our game on this without adding too many bells and whistles and monitoring devices and monitoring times at the same time that we really are trying to advance in a really important public purpose goal. And so thank you for all the time that you've spent on it and the kudos that you've gotten all around, not just today, but in general, for your willingness to listen and try and figure out how to navigate it. That's the heart of what you do as public servants, and it's great to get to work with you. I know I've made you crazy too over the course of the last year and a half I've been here, but I think it's all to the good. So thank you for that, and thank you, of course, as my colleague said, for what everyone did. So with that, I'll just ask, all in favor?
And just to be clear, the motion includes the change
The
sheet,
change
which
sheet.
you specifically referenced.
She did.
as
I
well
thought
as
that was
everything
very
read
good.
into the record by Laurel, on the screen, revised to say could constitute.
Yes, Mr. Lawfer, it includes all of that. May we
I just
vote
want to drag
now?
out the fun.
That would
You're
be-
making the vice chair very nervous.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed?
Thank you.
Vice Chair, would you like the last word? You said you were going to wait. That was all you wanted.
I'm just so, I mean, you can't, I mean, this has been a long time, a very long time, and we have seen this come and go. It's not nearly so long as what you have endured, and so I really do thank you, and I thank all of you. I mean, everyone has helped to make this a permit that I hope will get us to the next step, and it is going to take lots of work. So we're in there to help too. So now we can. Thank you.
A question for Mr. Lawfer. So is ex parte lifted now?
Well, and recall, because of some changes from SB 965 a few years ago, there was a notice or an opportunity for
Oh,
there
that's
to be
right.
notice of an ex parte communication that occurred. But yes, it is gone. You can talk freely and not even have to disclose the communication at this point.
With exception of some issues that are still pending before us in a certain petition.
Well, certainly, all the issues raised in here with the exception of receiving water limitations. However, I should say the receiving water limitations issue that's raised in the LAMS4 permit is solely about the municipal stormwater permits. So as long as it doesn't bleed into receiving water limitations for municipal stormwater permits, everything concerning the general industrial permit is now a free subject of communication for the board members with no disclosure requirements. Until one of the commenters out here sues you, and I advise you not to speak about pending litigation, but
Okay, don't sue us, guys.
But you will let us know immediately, as you always do. All right.